Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you want to chat?
Yeah, you were probably saying dumb shit on Twitter, but I don't remember what it was.
No, I just said that I thought you looked and sounded like Mike Cernovich.
What did I say that looked and sounded like Mike Cernovich?
No, I think you physically look like Mike Cernovich. I think you physically sound like Mike Cernovich. Like your actual voice
that was
and
really the extent of
your body. Well, and I think generally speaking, you appear to me to be a pretty toxic dude. Like, it seems to me like you're always talking up like how much you want to do for progressive causes in the left, but it seems like you spend a lot of time punching left and shitting on people that are fucking marginalized groups. And I'm just kind of curious, like, is it like something in you that just like shitting on people, or like what is it?
So I don't ever market myself as like, I want to do a lot for progressive causes. I don't need that. I don't have that white savior complex in me. Like I know a lot of you guys do. So that's not what I market myself as.
Well, that's
there
good.
Are causes
I mean,
that yeah, I know. I just like to, when people just make up shit about me, I like to correct it when I have the opportunity to. Secondly, in terms of punching left a lot, yeah, I mean, like a lot of the online discourse is dominated by very, very, very far left, like insanity. So that tends to be what I kind of hit on right now. You guys managed to get a lot of the conservatives banned on a lot of these spaces, so there's not much about them to talk about. So yeah, this is kind of the world that we live in now.
Wait. You guys, who is you guys? Did I get somebody banned?
The
right?
the kind of the very far left, kind of like cultural push, like removed a lot of the conservative speakers and people from these platforms. So there's not really much for me to respond to anymore in terms of like conservative people on Twitter or like conservative YouTubers. Like they're all just like very insular now.
So instead of coalition building, it's more fruitful to punch left.
Are you accusing me of having the problem building a coalition when I've got fans from like far left, center, mid right, and even some far right? Do you think I'm the problem?
No.
When it comes to coalition building?
Because the thing is that the people who are your audience, by and large, just fall in line with whatever the fuck you say. I mean, you have an online cult. You don't have, I wouldn't even call it I think you're more of a cult leader than you are like an actual like, I mean, I definitely wouldn't consider you a political pundit. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't consider most of the people on Twitch a political pundit, to be clear. I think there's a bunch of LARPers posing as political pundits, yourself included. A lot of people that like to play like they know everything and they've got all the answers, and their answer is the ultimate and be-all answer to everything. And if you don't believe the way I do, then I'm gonna shit all fucking over you. And that's exactly what you seem to do to people. Mm-hmm. And okay. I don't see how that's fruitful. I don't see how that helps anything or anyone, or helps even if you have a modicum of interest in pushing any progressive cause, even on the slightest bit, even if you don't market yourself as that, you would think that the very, very least you'd spend more time dealing with solutions than finding ways to punch at people. And instead, it seems like all you want to do is fucking talk shit to people. Like, that's legit what I see when I see your posts. It's a non-stop shit-talking event.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. It's really tempting to shut on you because I know that you don't probably engage with much of my stuff, but I'm actually working on a big piece right now about people's perceptions of me, which I think are very interesting, okay? The concept of who I am to you, in your mind, there exists like a version of me that I don't believe is real. Obviously, you think it's real, and obviously you think that I have some incentive to try to say it is not real because it doesn't suit me for like online discourse or whatever, right? But I'm just curious. There's like a couple of questions. So, have you ever actually watched any of my videos, or have you only ever watched people's clips of my videos?
I've watched some of your videos, yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I actually liked a lot of your content. It just seems like it's gotten more vitriolic over the past. And I'll be frank. I'll be frank with you. I've been on Twitch for 7 months. I had never even fucking touched a Twitch account before that. I'm not currently on Twitch. Obviously, I don't want to get booted or whatever, tossed or whatever. But in the time I've been here, it just seems like I'm not seeing a whole lot of fucking super positive vibes or energy coming from you about much of fucking anything. And it seems like It seems like an effort, like, and I don't know if it's an effort or if it's just by sheer virtue of your being frustrated with the online environment right now. But it seems you seem very black-pilled about shit. Like, like we're just in where we're at, and that's where it's gonna fucking be, and fuck everything else. You know, like tough shit. You know, like. I mean, like, I guess, like, and I'm watching like the trans thing, and we were on a debate panel about the trans sports thing, and believe me, I heard all sorts of shit about that from your cute little community, your sycophants. Oh, he bailed on Destiny, he just fucking left. I do appreciate you calling me based though, because I am based.
It was ironic because you were misogynistic, but okay.
Well, I was misogynistic because you said a woman can't put her fucking luggage up in the overhead bin. Who's misogynistic? That sounds
I think you were
fucking
I think I'm
misogynistic.
calling you misogynist because I think you said that you wanted to eliminate women's sports. Did you not say that? I might be misremembering.
No, I said that I considered a possibility that it might be a good idea to degender sports if we can't figure out what the fuck we're doing with trans people. Because there literally are not enough trans people to start a league in any fucking sport. And their impact on women's sports is so minuscule and minute at this point that I was totally memeing and don't even find it a relevant conversation to bring up as a point of concern. I think it's concern trolling the whole fucking thing.
Okay, what's your favorite TV show?
I don't really watch TV.
What do you do for fun?
Play music.
Wait, what do you play for music?
I'm a singer and a guitar player. My whole Twitter following is because of my band. It's nothing to do with my political views. I have very few people that follow me on Twitter for my political views, because this is all new. This is all new.
What kind of music do you guys play?
Well, we don't anymore. It's a metal band though.
Okay, gotcha.
What is a metal band?
Okay. I'm trying to lower the temperature of the conversation.
No, I can tell. That's fine. I would rather have an amicable conversation than just fucking scream at each other, so I'm good with that.
Okay. I don't believe that your perceptions of me are accurate. Fuck, I keep eating this thing on me too. So I have the vast majority. I don't want to say the vast majority. The majority of the conversations that I have on my stream are pretty, like, I don't want to say boring, but they're not very, like, confrontational. Like, we're not usually screaming at people. It super depends on the topic. I have a lot of reasonable conversations, even from people that I super disagree with, from the left, from the far left, from the right, from the far right. Like, it depends on the topic, but I have, like, lots of, like, non-insane conversations.
Sure, and that's admirable.
Sure. I don't even care if it's admirable. One of the things that's frustrating to me is it feels like a lot of people draw very strong opinions about who I am based on what gets clipped in some social media circles. It's very frustrating. I'm also very frustrated. I'm going to just take a stab. Are you like a fan of Vosh or...
I'm going to tell you, like I've told everybody else that fucking asked me this question, I am no GG gang. No GG gang or don't bang. Fuck the GGs. Fuck DGG. Fuck VGG. Fuck any other fucking GG out there. I think you guys create fucking cult-like environments and it's fucking weird.
Okay. I get accused of having a cult-like environment pretty often. But, like, if you ever watch my subreddit during, like, any major drama, there are times when I get pretty major pushback from my fans. I got a lot of pushback relating to, like, an NFT sponsor. I've gotten a lot of pushback relating to relating to a lot of different types of trans issues that have come up. I've gotten pushback related to, most recently, like, stuff related to, like, non-binary stuff. Like, I get, like, quite a bit of pushback. I feel like this idea that, like, my audience are all sycophants literally just comes from people see that I have, like, a fan base, and they're like, "Wow, they must all just be sycophants."
It's from getting dogpiled by your sycophants over shit that's irrational at times. You know, people taking irrational jabs, or like in my case, having your fucking sycophants come onto my YouTube channel because I happen to have an opinion about one of your opinions, and telling me that my fucking daughter should die. You know, shit like that. Like, you know, so Yeah, I do.
Do you not think that...
tend to think that there's people amongst your community that, and I don't necessarily think that means your whole community is like that, right? But there is definitely an error or an elucidation of that within your community that I feel goes unaddressed. How's that?
Why do you... Okay, but unaddressed how? Anytime these people are brought up to me, I ban them. I don't tolerate it happening ever in my community. I don't tolerate comments like that. I have a son. Why the fuck would I tolerate people telling other people that their children should die? Do you not understand that any time you get into a disagreement with a large content creator, that two things happen? One, some of their fans are obviously going to come over and say like, oh, you're a dumb fuck or whatever. That's always going to happen. And two, there's also going to be like riffraff that are watching from like the rafters that are also going to come in and comment as well, depending on like what issue they feel strongly about. So for instance, I have a lot of people, because I've debated a lot of right-wingers, I've got a lot of right-leaning people that hate watch me. And anytime I'm talking to a trans person, those same people will show up in my mentions to be transphobic against people that I'm debating. That's always going to happen. But I think we can understand that is like a thing that happens without thinking that like my community is like a sycophantic, transphobic, horrible community that is like constantly attacking people. I think those two claims are quite different.
I would agree with you that I don't necessarily think all of your community is transphobic. I don't believe that. I think that your current take on the trans issues are not great. And I think that you're continuing to perpetuate and not lower the temperature of the argument is just, I don't think it's a good look for you. I don't think that, if you're being an ally, that's showing what's allyship. It's easier just to say, fuck it,
I don't give a fuck about being an ally. I super don't care. I think all that shit is really cringe. I don't think that I have any transphobic beliefs, and I don't think that I contribute to transphobia, though. I don't even think any of my beliefs are controversial. I don't know if you want to do it or not, but I'm pretty sure that if you and me were to talk about any of my trans beliefs, by the end of the conversation, you will either agree with me fully, or you'll say, okay, well, I understand your perspective, and of course that's not transphobic. Can you think of like one belief I have where you're like, that's obviously like a transphobic belief?
Well, I think canceling trans people out of sports entirely, by de facto canceling trans people out of sports, appears like a transphobic take. I mean...
Okay, but then why couldn't I say that your take of opening or eliminating all gender categories, can I say that that's a misogynistic take since you're effectively eliminating women from sports?
No, because I'm not counting out women. I'm not saying women can't participate or can't rise to a level to compete in sports. I do think that there are women who have every ability to compete in a level with any other athlete, whether male, female, trans, or cis.
Okay, so then just to check where we're at on this conversation, do you think that if all the categories were degendered, do you think that women could be competitive with men in most sports?
I don't know. That has yet to be seen. I would like to see what that looks like, and I think that you could start with sports that maybe are not full contact type sports and move from there. But
okay, let's just I won't argue this point, but I'll just ask you, like, if it could be demonstrated hypothetically that women and men could never compete together, that men would outshine in basically every athletic category, would you change your opinion on this? Would you say like, okay, fine, maybe we can't desegregate sports?
I mean, again, like, I'm looking for solutions, so I'm open to science that would allow for other solutions, absolutely. What I'm not open for is a blanket of, we're just going to exclude all these people, and that's just going to be the end of the story.
I understand that sucks, but I'm trying to ask you, okay?
I'm telling you what my
perspective. Wait, hold on. I'm trying to ask you to look at the other side, because all you can see are trans people being excluded, and that's the only thing that you are able to perceive right now. But what I'm asking you to consider is that on the other end, it kind of looks like there's this request for all cis women to be excluded from competitive sports. That's what's at stake on the other end, and for some reason, it seems like you are either not acknowledging that, or you don't believe that, or...
I don't. I like, so the argument would be, right, if we did not degender sports and we left them as is, then trans people have no place anywhere in sports.
Or have to have a separate league or compete in an open category or something. It seems that sucks, by the way. I'm being honest with you. That's like a shitty thing because at the very least in college, like, you're kind of like fucking trans people over and their ability to participate.
Well, you're fucking them over all the way around. You're even fucking them over on in terms of like high school sports and in terms of junior high school sports. Their whole entire sporting like life is gone, is essentially
Well,
gone,
sure. So,
because
like,
there's never going to be, at least not for at least I'd say the next 10 to 20 years, there's never going to be enough trans people in a normal community in order for them to have the ability to compete in a league that is of their own or a category that is of their own. And that's
Sure.
what my
So-
concern is. Then how are they ever going to be athletes? How are they ever going to test their mettle or even know that, what the case is, where they stand?
I understand what you're saying, okay? But first of all, so my position only applies to college sports. I don't care who competes with who in like grade school and high school. I think it's a little bit different. So my position is with college sports. Secondly, I think that there are other places beyond like professional sports leagues or college sports for people to play. Like there are a ton of recreational leagues that exist. There are other types of leagues that exist that are outside of like college or like the NFL or whatever, outside the big leagues. Like there are places where you can play sports. It doesn't have to be taking up like a college sport position or like a position like in a professional game, right? So these places do exist, number one. Then number two, I guess something that I'm curious about, if you think that women and men could theoretically compete together, then why couldn't we just say trans women can compete in like cis male leagues? Why can't they just go and do that?
So yeah, actually degendering sports, if you really believe that to be the case, then that would happen by default, right? Because trans women would outperform women and end up in leagues that would be predominantly male.
Sure, but right now, the problem with the degendering sports is that, I guess you don't believe this, so it's not like if we degender sports, women are basically done competing. Like they're not going to have a place like in any top college team. There's no more Division I women's anything. There's no like, for instance, all the women in the WNBA right now, if they wanted to, they could go play in the NBA. Like it's not like it's locked to only men. Anybody can do that, but women just aren't typically competitive at those levels in sports with men.
Could it be like a societal or an environmental issue where they don't feel safe or comfortable even if they can compete in those arenas?
No.
No, you don't think it's societal? You don't think there's a, inherent patriarchal ideology that could fundamentally, what do I want to say, deter women from going into men's sports who would otherwise be able to compete with men?
I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that there are social pressures that exist, but I think at the end of the day, I think that there are very real and very substantial differences between the strengths and athletic capabilities of men and women, such that no amount of societal pressure will ever equalize these two things. It will never happen. Again, like anybody in the WNBA that wants could go play for the NBA, but there's a reason why none of them can, right? And there are like so many stories of, was it like the I think in Canada, like the Olympic hockey team, the female hockey team, I think loses to like a boys high school team, a good high school team, but like a high school team. I think it happened with women's soccer football team. Has like there are these different scattered examples. It doesn't happen too often because why would you make these people compete with each other? But like you just can't. The differences are huge. They're like massive. And again, if women wanted to compete in these male leagues, they could right now. But they don't.
Sure, but that again goes back to why I even made the statement in the first place about degendering leagues, because it, again, just like how ridiculous that sounds, how it would fucking, like you're saying, completely exclude women. What your suggestion is completely excludes trans people. Completely.
I understand, and it's rough. But
so that's what I'm saying. There's no, like, in terms of the impact on the marginalized peoples, like, there's no difference.
Well, there is a difference, though, because women are 50% of the population and trans people are like 1% of the population.
Right, and that further buttresses my point that they're not having that big of an impact on women's sports.
But the problem is, for every single trans person that is playing college sports is having an impact on women's sports.
Well, everybody that plays any sport is going to have an impact. That's a redundant
Well, but that's
argument.
okay. If we have leagues created for cis women, that's fine. But every NCAA athlete that is a trans person is an NCAA athlete that is not a cis person, right? And if we've segregated off gender things for women to have spaces to compete, if they feel like they have like an unfair competitive edge against trans women, then I mean, like, I think that's something that's worth talking about.
So you think that cis women do have an unfair competitive advantage against trans women? That's what you just
Trans
said.
women have an unfair competitive advantage against cis women.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify. You got that backwards there. So just making sure. Of course you want to have the conversation, but we're talking about such a minute population of people. Do you really think that's having such a major impact that we need to create the outrage that's being created over it right now, that there needs to be weeks of conversation about this, that it needs to turn into a huge fucking Twitter battle back and forth between all these fucking parties? Or is this something where maybe, just maybe, people who aren't totally fucking confident about trans people, don't fully understand what trans people go through, might just be getting fear-mongered into buying into a bunch of bullshit? Are talking about such a few number of people?
Yeah, but the problem is that the fear-mongering is effective because so many people on the left want to die on the hill of trans sports. That's what makes it an issue. I think that if most people on the left were like, yeah, the trans sports thing is pretty weird, who knows, we'll wait for more data, I don't think this would be nearly as much an issue. But when you see so many people fighting tooth and nail to try to say things like there are no biological differences really between men and women competitors, trans women should be able to compete with cis women, and then you're getting the odd story that comes out every now and then of a trans woman, dominating cis women, all of these are issues that further divide most of the population in a negative way regarding trans issues. So it's this expenditure of so much social capital for what you say, and what I agree is kind of a niche issue. I don't think it's worth throwing so much progress away over to try to fight and die on the hill of desegregating sports. So
then again, we're still left at this impasse. What do we do with trans people in order for them to be able to compete and live a life that everybody else leads?
They can't live a life that everybody else leads. They already can't. They're trans, right? There's already going to be some fundamental differences in their navigation through the world, number one. But number two, I think that most people should be allowed to do most things in life. If that includes playing sports, I think that's fine. I don't think that everybody is entitled to the privilege of playing in college sports or in professional leagues.
Do you think that entitlement should revolve around gender identity? Do you think
how the leagues are we gender our leagues. It's males in one league and females in another league. We're females in one league and then an open league for the men.
So, but what about trans men? We don't talk about them in the sports discussion either.
Well, trans men technically get fucked in your world. Well, not in your world, but trans men get fucked in the world where cis women play with trans women and trans men play with cis men, because trans men will never be competitive with cis men.
There was a study done by the Air Force that showed that actually trans men actually outperformed cis men.
So there was
in push-ups, in running.
I understand. There's one study that gets shown. I think it's is it sample size 15 or something? It's one study for an Air Force push-up test. It's not very good, and there's a ton of other data and reviews out there that go over the overwhelming amount of, and most trans debaters, Ashley Online will admit this, Jangles will admit this. Most people that are really familiar will say yeah, there are still significant advantages that trans women have post-transition compared to cis women. There are a couple of odd one-out studies that you can show, that Air Force push-up study is one of them, but I don't think that that's enough to overcome the rest of the evidence that is in favor of trans women still having a significant impact post-transition.
So, there's inherent advantages with most people who are good at their sport too. So what? Fucking Michael Phelps produces less lactic acid than most people. He has a longer wingspan than most people his height. These are both advantages. He has short legs. These are advantages that make him a better swimmer. Biologically, should he not be able to compete with other people that don't have those biological advantages?
Okay, are you gay or are you straight? Are you bisexual or?
I don't see how that's relevant.
For a straight person typically, if we say a straight man, typically wants to date or have sexual relationships with women. Now, within that category of women, there's a huge range of what they would consider acceptable. Some are short, some are tall, some have big boobs, big ass, small ass, whatever. There's a huge range of what a straight person is willing to have sex with in terms of, because it's a woman. When we have segregated sports off between men and women, we understand that there are still going to be differences within those groups, excluding those two groups.
Okay,
So
how does
just
this,
because we
how does
say
this
that
differ?
like just
How does this
What?
differ? This is the same. So they have a genetic predisposition for advantage. How does that differ than like Michael Phelps having a genetic predisposition for advantage?
because we haven't separated swimmers into categories of like long torso, short torso, or like lots of lactic acid removal and not that's not how we segregate those sports.
Right.
We just segregate them based on men and women.
Right. So if we segregate based off men and women, and somebody defines himself as a woman, genders himself as a woman, and they are a woman, and they have some biological advantages, then so be it. It's what it is. It's the same way that I would look at Michael Jordan or Michael Phelps or anybody else.
Yeah, but the problem is that what is like the end result for that? The end result for that is that women just don't really have any representation in sports anymore. Is that the goal, or is that an acceptable outcome?
That would mean that trans people just completely took over all women's sports, and that there weren't any more cis women in sports.
Well, no,
Are you talking
about just having trans women compete with cis women instead of desegregating sports, or?
Correct.
Okay, but if it is the case that trans women have a significant advantage that they've gotten through living as a different sex, then it seems like we've destroyed the purpose of segregating the leagues based on sex.
And we may find that. Maybe that's the next evolution. Maybe we do end up in a degendered situation further down the line. And
Okay.
that's the other thing that we still aren't clear on either. Like we are dealing with such a small amount of people, for one, and two, we're not even talking about the fact that as this continues to occur in society, in our lives, in where we exist, that there's going to be a lot of people who transition pre-puberty.
I think that prepubescent transitioning is different. I think that if you transition to pre-puberty, I think you have a lot stronger of an argument that you should be able to compete in the league that you identify with.
And see, this is where I rage quit last time with you, because I was trying to find out your view on this argument, and you shut it down, and then I got stupid ass fucking GSU talking some bullshit. So this is where my frustration lies. I can even accept that, that you would have concerns, somebody post puberty transitioning, especially if they trained their whole life as a male, and then they end up transitioning and they end up in female sports. I can see where somebody would have a feeling of concern for that. Where I don't see concern, and where our last interaction, where I was fucking furious and I left, was we were talking about pre-pubescent transition, puberty blockers, things like that, and I was getting from you and GSU Gambit dogpiled for saying that should be enough. And at that point, like, how is that not enough? Granted, I think there's the science is still out on it, and I want to see, what comes of that, but I think that's a fucking hell of a different situation than to talk about somebody who's transitioning at 28 years old.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think it is a vastly different situation. I've said in the past, in terms of transitioning and prepubescently, like puberty is where most of the big sex dimorphism happens, right? So, I mean, like if you're transitioning prepubescently, it seems like we're probably getting rid of a lot of the problems, and it's probably way more okay. But I think I've always had that position.
See, that wasn't elucidated in our earlier conversation, so I do appreciate that. That definitely softens my take towards what you have to say.
Sure. Are you familiar with like gender critical people or TERFs?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So one of the big concerns that TERFy women have is they're worried that the existence of trans women threatens women's spaces. Do you understand that when we say things like maybe we should just abolish women's sports or desegregate sports, it feels like it's lending credence to those TERFy arguments?
Oh, I do. And that's why I made it a point to illustrate that was an ad absurdum, that was definitely...
Well, I don't think it is an ad absurdum, because I think for the vast majority of the time, when I look at how trans people function in the world, I super don't believe that trans people threaten women's spaces. I don't think that that's the case the vast majority of the time. But when we're talking about accommodating 1% of the population, and then to do that, we're going to eliminate all of women's sports, well, now those TERFy arguments start to look a lot different, because it's like, well, hold on. Now we're actually talking about the destruction of a huge woman's space to accommodate a very, very, very small minority of people. Doesn't that seem to be worrisome? Like, why give that ground if we don't even have good reason to do so?
Well, I mean, is there not a good reason? I mean, humanity is a pretty fucking good reason to treat people like they're accepted and part of society. I mean,
But then women get. But then you're talking about. You keep focusing on the acceptance of trans people, but then you miss the rejection of all cis women.
I don't think that they have to be mutually exclusive things. I think you can both
You're talking about desegregating leagues. That's what you're talking about.
I think you can both accept women as they are, and you can accept trans women in those spaces, and understand that, you know, there's got to be other ways that we can segregate sports so that it's fair for people. You know, whether that's, you want to talk about, like, I know there's been talk in the Olympics about doing it through testosterone and endocrine testing, things like that. I mean, there's things that we can
but
do.
like the problem is that like this all like sounds nice, like it's all kind of like nice lip service, but like if we segregate based on like endocrine profiles or whatever, like we're still gonna basically end up with like gender segregated stuff. Like that's what it's gonna look like, right? Like women T levels is nowhere near male T levels, and then any other thing that you segregate by, you're still basically gonna wind up having to segregate by gender or sex anyway. Like if we were to like segregate by like height or weight, we're still going to have to segregate within height and weight by male and female. Like a 5'4" female is not going to be competitive with a 5'4" male.
I would say it depends on the sport, but I can see where you're coming from.
Okay, I mean, it like women, for instance, women have to carry more body fat than men, right? Like that's something that a cis woman can never overcome. She always has to be fatter than a man, right?
That's what we'd say statistically is true, sure.
Well, no, that's like biologically a requirement. Like if a woman cuts to like 7% body fat, I think she just dies. I think that's what happens. Like they can't live at those body fat levels. Whereas men can cut to much lower body fat levels just because of like just because of the biology of our bodies. We're cis men and cis women, I would say.
So you're saying that can you send me something on that? Because I have never heard that somebody's going to die by having under 7% body fat. And I know women bodybuilders, so that would be a new one for me. But
if you truly know, I'm being very nice here. If you truly know a woman bodybuilder, I will stake every dime I have on her repeating to you exactly what I just said. She'll probably say the standards for judging women are different in bodybuilding competitions, and she'll also tell you, yeah, when you talk about like men's extreme body fat cuts of like 2 to 4%, like this insane shit, women can't cut as low as men do when they cut to body fat percentages. I promise that if you ask any bodybuilder woman that, a cis bodybuilder woman, she'll tell you the same thing. Even on drugs and shit, women just can't get to as low a body fat as men can. They'll die. I think their brains like fall apart because you need some level of body fat to like sustain like brain activity and shit. And women just can't get that low.
Interesting. That would be a new one that I wasn't aware of. So if that's the case, sure, there's an argument to be made with that.
Okay, leaving the whole trans sports thing, because obviously that's like the most like insanely contentious topic. Like, do you think that I have any other like insanely transphobic positions, or is this like the only one?
I don't really find you. I don't. From the experience I've had with you and what I know of you, I've never really thought like, oh, Destiny's inherently a transphobe. Like, you know, sure, I get pissed off and say shit. I think everybody does. But I don't think you're inherently a transphobe. I think that this is a really tough conversation where it'd be easy to fall on either side of what somebody might deem as transphobic. It would be it. And I think it's just because it is one of those conversations where you are really hedging on a lot of unknowns. And, you know, also, you know, there's that, like I said, there's that justice portion of it where, you know, trans people do want to feel included and they don't want to feel like they're on the outside. So while I don't think that you are transphobic, I think that the view and the constant saber rattling about this specific issue can appear to some as being transphobic, or at least, you know, having some aggression towards trans people. If I were in your shoes, I would just fucking say screw it. I don't fucking care anymore. Like it's not that important.
Yeah, but
at
the
this
problem
point.
is that like culture wars are like very big driving factors for a lot of voters. How they feel about gay issues, how they feel about LGBT stuff, how they feel about abortion. Like these could be like huge driving like wedge issues for certain voters. So if it is the case that there's like an insane amount of conversation going on about these topics, I kind of have to engage with them. I can't just pretend that like I did that for a while. Like nobody on the left is truly arguing this. Nobody really feels this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get people that are like arguing like so much about it online now, who are getting like, you know, massive engagement on their tweets, who are getting real life activists popping up, like at some point you kind of have to contend with it, right?
But don't you think that you incited that engagement? Because I didn't really hear much about this issue until you started talking about it. Like, I mean, it was around, but not at the degree it was in our space until you started speaking on it.
I would say that the Leah Thomas performing well in that one swim meet is what it like started this conversation, reignited the conversation. Every time a trans woman athlete does well in a college environment, this conversation is going to get reignited. It's not me doing that, right? That's like, but maybe I'm the one that brought it to your particular circles, but like everybody is talking about it.
The perpetuation of like the aggression towards trans people as a result of this conversation, do you feel like that's fruitful?
No, I don't. But I think that there are a lot of trans people that would just wish that people would not die on this hill for this issue, because they know that every time it comes up, like their issues are going to be brought to the forefront in the worst way in society over and over and over again. Then instead of having conversations about like, how can we accelerate trans people towards gender affirming care? How can we identify trans people that need help? Instead of like these conversations, now we're wasting so much airtime again talking about whether or not trans women are like identical to cis women for athletic purposes. And then all of the dog shit arguments relating to trans people get wheeled out from people that make me wonder if they know anything about trans issues at all. I think it's one of my biggest issues. With this particular thing.
I'm willing to concede this. I'll take the ICO rules route with it and say, let's just abolish sports until we can figure it the fuck out.
But then
I'm perfectly okay with that too.
But now you've gone like full Russia and revitalizing NATO, right? Like when you say we should abolish sports, all of those turfy arguments seem like they have so much credence, right? Well, today they wanted to abolish sports. Tomorrow they're going to abolish all of our bathrooms. The day after that, they're going to abolish like every woman's space. And now now everybody's like on alert. And now all cis women who before might have been like, you know, whatever about trans issues, they're like, holy shit, I need to be against trans people because they're going to destroy all of my spaces.
But these are the same people that are going to say that no matter what.
No, I don't believe that.
No matter fucking what. They're already they've already been packaged and sent away on off to the shipping yard to make their shitty votes against whatever trans policy is out there. I don't think we're changing minds with that.
I hear this argument a lot. They're going to do it no matter what. If that's the case, why do you care what I say? If people are going to believe what they're going to believe no matter what, because I hear people say that a lot. Oh, well, they're going to care no matter what. Okay, well, then who cares what I say? Why does it matter what I say? They're going to believe whatever anyway. Because how can I simultaneously have a bad influence on people while you're also telling me that these people are beyond influence regardless?
Well, I just say something about what you have to say because I have to hear it, and I have to hear about it constantly, and it's all over my fucking Twitter feed, you know? That's why, you know? I mean, come on. That's why anybody says anything to you, Destiny, because whatever you say ends up blasted all over their Twitter feed, and if you're anywhere in the Twitch politics spectrum, we're gonna have to deal with whatever it is that you put out there because, you know, again, you're the biggest politics streamer on any platform, you know, outside of say TYT or something like that, you know. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna get that. You're generating a lot of buzz and you're generating a lot of attention, so that's gonna happen. You can't expect for people that are sharing the space with you not to want to say something or confront you about it.
Sure, that's fine. But if you're going to use that reason, then you can't expect that when like we start to argue that women's spaces should be eliminated, that like cis people and like normal people in society aren't going to see that and feel threatened, right? We should be able to acknowledge that, like, okay, yeah, I can understand why these people might feel really defensive over their spaces now.
I mean, I do understand why they feel defensive over their spaces. To be fair, I have a daughter, you know, and you know, if you don't think that it's come up to me, like, she wants to play sports, right? And, you know, she has trans friends, you know, and, you know, I've wondered myself as a parent, what's that going to look like with her playing sports? But at the end of the day, she's quite content playing sports with her trans friends, so I've never expressed much of a, like, concern about it.
Sure, that's fine, but, like, how old is your daughter?
She's 13.
Okay, so your daughter's 13 right now. Anybody can play high school sports. I think everybody should play high school sports. Because, like, at that age, like, sports are about, you know, learning to socialize with people, getting out, being physical, being part of a team, like, extracurriculars. I think everybody should be doing sports, grade school. I have no problem with, like, trans women playing with cis women in high school and grade school. That's fine. I think that's cool. But when we look at something like high school volleyball, I think there are like 250,000 high school volleyball players. When we look at like college volleyball, there are like 2,000 volleyball players. So if your daughter wants to play past high school and then going into college, she has to start competing with people that have a massive biological advantage that was inherited like prior to transitioning. Well, I think now the playing field looks a lot different, and that I think there's there's more at stake here, because it's not just a spot on a high school team, LOL. Now it's like you have a very limited number of spots that exist on college teams for women to play, and if those start to, even one trans person being on there, it's like, well, fuck, like this person's inheriting so much biological advantage from when they were male. It doesn't seem fair that a cis woman would lose a spot on the team now for that.
So what's supposed to happen then? Like this is where I keep coming back to. It's like there's always going to be more women, more cis women than there are trans women. Trans women can't take up all those spaces.
Like not all of them, but any of them. If the spaces are segregated by gender, and if somebody's able to inherit a huge advantage because of gender, that's the whole reason why the spaces are segregated, right?
I mean, I suppose. It seems more like a societal norm than anything to me, but sure, we could say that. That's what I think it's come to. That's what the common reasoning is, sure.
Do you really think that the difference between men and women in sports is just societal norms?
I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that if women are trained from a young age in similar sports as men are, you might see a different scenario play out as far as women's ability to compete with men. For example, if you trained a woman to play football from the time she was a kid, the same way we train males, don't you think that it's possible that woman could be competitive with males because they are actually training in that? A lot of times we don't train people in those sports.
Absolutely not even close.
They are never conditioned in those types of sports. They're from the time they're young. They are never brought up in those types of sports.
Men are just
look at gymnastics. Put women in gymnastics. They grow up in those sports and they exceed and do exceedingly well in those sports.
There are some women's events, but men competing in those events would destroy women. Women only succeed in the events where they're kind of like locked into it. But like there are videos on the internet of like Olympic medal winning women watching men doing their routines, saying like, "What the fuck? I didn't even know that was possible." Whether we're talking about like doing floor or the beam or anything else, like it's just given the same amount of training time, like a man's body is always going to be able to progress farther athletically than a woman's body. But this sounds like it's a little contentious, so I guess I don't need you to buy all this right now.
Sure. Well, here's where I'll kind of synopsize my views on what you're asking me about. Number one, Destiny, I don't think you're a transphobe. I think that you've made some takes that make trans people very uncomfortable, and they're not feeling very good about you in a lot of their spaces right now, from what I've seen. Okay, I don't think that necessarily means you're 100% transphobic or hate trans people. I don't believe that. Because I know you've done some advocacy work, and I know you've given trans people a space in your platform, to have a voice. So I don't see that. I just think that this is a really bad take, and I think the perpetuation of the vitriol around this take, it doesn't do you any favors as far as optics. But that said, hopefully I think you're a well-intended person, generally speaking. I hope that you come to a point where you realize not everybody on the online left is fucking crazy, and that a lot of us do really want to make tangible progress, and that even if you hate Bernie, some of us Bernie bros, we still, are out here fighting the good fight, wanting good things to happen for our country, and we don't all expect it to be a revolution. Some of us do understand incremental change has to happen. Of course, maybe that comes with age. Maybe because I'm older than a lot of these folks that are, on Twitch and YouTube. There's a different, I see things through a different lens. But I do think that there's a possibility for progress, and I do think there's a possibility for change. And I would invite you to try to engage with good faith people that are to the left of you to have those conversations.
All right. I mean, I try, but I mean, a lot of them at this point like aren't even willing to have a conversation. But
here I am.
Okay.
I'm having the conversation with you, and I'll be glad to do it again anytime. Anytime.
Gotcha. All right.
So,
well, anything else you want to chat about?
No, that's all I got, man. I appreciate you taking the time with me. You know, I've been around in your orbit here and there, you know, through the Prime Walk-On panels, so it's good to be able to have a conversation with you one-on-one without having a bunch of people yelling between us. So certainly appreciate that, and thank you.
Yep. Well, hey, have a good one, man.
You too.